All right, so get this. We're officially living in the Anthropocene. Like, that's the era where humans are the dominant force shaping the planet.
Yeah, pretty wild, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
Climate change, species extinction,
Yeah.
the whole shebang. But, what I'm really curious about is, can all our fancy tech actually get along with, well, not trashing the environment?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And honestly, it makes you think when you consider how human history got us to this point, even our biology.
Totally. Speaking of which, one of the things that totally jumped out at me from the research was this whole thing about storytelling.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating.
Apparently humans are, like, hardwired for it. And it's the reason we can all work together in massive numbers.
It's true. Imagine trying to explain, like, money to a chimp. It only has value because we all agree it does, right?
Whoa.
Religions, nations, even corporations, these are all stories we tell ourselves, and they shape our reality.
So we're basically living in a world built on stories. That's crazy. But then the research throws us a curveball. The agricultural revolution, which we usually think of as this big win for humanity,
Right.
had a dark side.
Yeah. That's something we often forget. Of course, agriculture allowed us to settle down and build civilizations, but it also caused massive deforestation and basically exploitation of the land. And let's not forget the impact on domesticated animals.
Dude, that comparison of pigs to wild boars really stuck with me, right? On the surface, a pig in a pen seems to have it easy, right? Compared to a wild boar in the forest, but is it really a better life?
Exactly. It makes you think about what a good life really means, not just for humans, but for every species. Are comfort and security really the ultimate goals? Or is there something to freedom and the challenges that come with it?
Almost a philosophical question.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that make you think, there's this whole knowledge illusion concept that really stood out.
Oh, that's a good one. Basically, it just points out that most of us have specialized knowledge, in specific areas, but we lack a basic understanding of how the world works. You remember that zip experiment?
Oh, yeah?
Most people think they know how a zip works, but when you ask them to explain it...
Total blank. That was me, by the way. I was like, wait, how does a zip work?
Like, we're all relying on this borrowed knowledge, trusting that someone else has figured it out. But when we're talking about something as complex as the environment, that's a problem.
Yeah, huge problem. If we don't get the interconnectedness of these ecosystems, how can we make informed decisions about protecting them? And don't even get me started on climate change. How can we even address something that big when we're working with incomplete knowledge?
Absolutely. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
So where do we even begin? Is it even possible to, reverse all the damage we've done?
That is the question. But before we jump into solutions, I think we should look at some of the ways human behavior is shaping the planet that we don't usually think about. Like, did you ever think that something as simple as a lawn could be a symbol of human dominance over nature?
Hold on, a lawn. Really? Okay, that one caught me off guard. I mean, I love a nice green lawn, but how is that connected to the Anthropocene?
Think about it. Lawns are all about our desire to, control nature, to force order on something that's wild. And the fact that this lawn thing started in European gardens and has spread across the globe, even to places where lawns are completely impractical.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it says a lot about how our desires shape the environment.
Wow. Never thought of it that way. It's like we're all trying to create our own little perfect world. But as you said, it comes at a cost.
Oh, definitely. Lawns guzzle water, they need fertilizers, pesticides, all that stuff. And it all impacts the environment. They often replace natural plants and ecosystems, and that reduces biodiversity. It's a great example of how actions that seem harmless can have huge consequences.
So even my desire for a little patch of green can have a global impact.
That's wild. Okay, switching gears a bit. But sticking with this whole human impact thing, let's talk about terrorism. This research was mind-blowing.
It's a tough topic for sure. But yeah, if we can look at it objectively, we can see how terrorism is a unique example of how humans can influence the world. Not through force, but through fear.
Right. Like, it's about psychological damage more than physical destruction.
You got it.
It's almost like a performance, designed to create fear and uncertainty.
Exactly. And sadly, it often works. It pushes governments to do things that are way more damaging than the terrorist acts themselves. Think about all the wars that have been started because of terrorism, or the limits on our freedoms in the name of security.
It's like you get stung by a bee, so you burn down your house.
Yeah.
You trying to get rid of the threat, but you cause way more damage in the process.
Perfect analogy. And that applies to our environment, too. If we freak out and panic about these challenges, we risk coming up with solutions that are worse than the problems. So we need to be smart and think long term.
Exactly.
Got it. But what about the digital age? Tech is evolving so fast. How does that fit into the whole Anthropocene thing?
Oh, it's a huge part of it. I mean, we're seeing things like AI and bioengineering, and while they have massive potential for good, they also come with some serious risks.
Okay, so let's talk downsides. The research talked about this digital dictatorship. What does that even mean?
Imagine a world where the government or corporations have access to tons of data about everything we do, our movements, what we say, even our thoughts and emotions. With AI, they could control everyone without even firing a shot.
That sounds terrifying, like straight out of a movie.
Yeah.
But is that even possible, or are we getting carried away here?
It's not sci-fi anymore. We're already seeing the early stages of this. Facial recognition, social media manipulation, all that. The question is, how do we make sure these technologies are used ethically? Who's in control, and what are they using them for?
And to bring it back to our original question, how do we make sure tech is developed in a way that helps create a sustainable future and not just destroy the planet?
We're at a crossroads.
All right, that's enough doom and gloom for now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about solutions. What makes you hopeful?
Honestly, I'm encouraged by how aware people are becoming, especially young people. There's a real sense of urgency, a real drive to find solutions.
Oh yeah, for sure. I see it too. People are getting more conscious about their impact, trying to live more sustainably. And it's not just individuals. Businesses and governments are starting to do things too.
You're right. There's a growing movement towards renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, all that. And we're seeing new tech that could help us tackle these big environmental challenges.
Okay, so there is some reason to be optimistic. But what about us as individuals? What can we do? It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
It is. It's easy to feel like anything we do is just a drop in the bucket,
Exactly. What difference can one person make?
Here's the thing. Every choice we make, every action we take, it all contributes to what the Anthropocene is. It's like we're all writing a sentence in the story of how humans impact the planet.
I like that. So what kind of sentence are you writing? What kind of story do you want to be a part of?
For me, it starts with being mindful of how much I consume, trying to reduce my impact.
Yeah, things like cutting down on waste, saving energy, thinking about what you buy.
Oh,
All the little things actually make a difference, right?
They do. And it's about pushing for policies that promote sustainability, supporting organizations working to create a better future, all that.
I like that. But it also means having those tough conversations with friends, family, challenging the status quo, changing our own behavior. Not always easy, but
it's necessary.
Totally. We need to go beyond just recognizing the problems. We need to find solutions.
Exactly. It takes courage, commitment, and being willing to get out of our comfort zones.
So individual actions matter, but we also need systemic change, right? We got to get to the root of these problems.
Absolutely. We have to rethink our economic systems, our politics, even our values. We need to shift away from this model of constant growth and consuming to one that prioritizes things like sustainability, well-being, and social justice.
That's a big ask. Are there any examples of societies that are actually doing this?
There are. There are amazing examples all over the world. Indigenous communities that have lived sustainably for centuries, modern eco-villages, transition towns, all experimenting with new ways of living.
That's awesome. Proof that a different future is possible.
Exactly. And it's not about going back to the past, but about creating a future that's high-tech and environmentally responsible.
Okay, feeling a little more hopeful now. But we've only scratched the surface, haven't we?
We have, but that's the beauty of these deep dives. It's not about getting all the answers. It's about asking new questions and exploring more.
So any resources or reading you'd recommend for folks who want to dive deeper into this stuff?
One book that blew my mind is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. It gives a fascinating overview of human history and how we've shaped the world.
And for anyone interested in tech and society, I'd say check out The Shallows by Nicholas Carr. It's about how digital tech is changing how we think.
Both excellent choices. And of course, there are articles, podcasts, documentaries, all sorts of things out there.
It's all about staying curious and keeping that deep diving spirit alive. But hey, we've got a lot more to cover in this deep dive, so stick with us.
Thinking about this digital future, it makes you see these historical parallels. Like, haven't we seen this before, this whole tech advancement and potential for control thing?
Yeah, that's what's so trippy about all this, right? We're talking AI and digital dictatorships, but it's like We're echoing themes from, like, the rise and fall of empires.
Exactly. Think about the British Empire, right? They used tech like steamships and telegraphs to like expand everywhere, took resources from their colonies and controlled everything through their advanced systems.
So are we saying AI could become the new empire, like algorithms and data instead of armies?
It's a scary thought, but it's not impossible, especially if we don't set up some ethical rules for AI, like international regulations.
And it's not just about bad intentions either, right? The research talked about how even tech that seems good can have, like, unintended consequences.
Remember that Google algorithm? The one for boat routes?
Oh yeah, that was weird.
It was supposed to make sailing more efficient, but the algorithm just prioritized points. The boats ended up sailing in circles.
That's hilarious, but kind of scary too.
Yeah.
How do we make sure these AI systems are actually doing what we want? Like, that they're aligned with human values and goals?
That's the big question, right? And it gets even more important as we give AI more and more power. We have to figure out how to build in some safeguards,
Yeah.
ways to make sure they're working towards the right outcomes.
So how do we do that? The research mentions self-correcting mechanisms, but I don't even know what that means for AI.
Okay, think of it like this. We have checks and balances for human power, right? Like in government or peer review in science. We need that kind of thing for AI. Ways to watch it, spot any biases, and then correct it if things go wrong.
But isn't that tough? AI is like a black box, right? Even the people who create it don't fully get how it works.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build a self-correcting mechanism for something you don't understand?
It's a massive challenge. We need everyone on board. Computer scientists, ethicists, social scientists, policymakers, everyone working together to figure out how to make AI transparent and accountable, and ultimately aligned with human values.
Sounds like we need a serious knowledge upgrade if we're going to handle this digital age responsibly.
We do. And that brings us back to the knowledge illusion. We need to be honest about what we don't know and be willing to really dive deep into these complex topics. No more skimming the surface.
No more zipping through life without knowing how things work.
Exactly. We need to slow down, ask questions, and really try to understand how everything is connected.
Okay, so we've got our work cut out for us. But on a more personal level, what can we actually do? It's easy to feel totally overwhelmed by all this.
I get it. It's easy to feel like whatever you do is just a tiny drop in the ocean. But here's the thing. Every choice we make, every action we take, contributes to this whole Anthropocene narrative. We're all writing a sentence in the story.
Love that analogy. So what kind of sentence are you writing? What story do you want to be a part of?
For me, it starts with being aware of my own consumption habits, trying to reduce my impact wherever I can.
Right, like being mindful of the food you eat, the clothes you buy, how you travel.
All of it.
All those little things actually add up.
They really do. And it's about speaking up for change, supporting politicians and organizations that care about sustainability and justice, making sure my values are reflected in the decisions that are being made.
But it's not always easy to stay positive, you know? Sometimes it feels like we're fighting a losing battle. How do you stay motivated when the problem seems so huge?
Honestly, I find inspiration in the stories of people who are actually making a difference. There are so many people and communities out there working hard to build a better future. Their stories remind me that change is possible, even when things seem impossible.
You're so right. It's about focusing on those glimmers of hope.
Absolutely, and remembering that we're not alone in this. There's a global movement of people who want a better world, and together we can actually make a difference.
So what are some of the solutions that seem most promising to you? The research talked about some pretty big ideas, like needing a global identity and a shift in values.
Yeah, it's becoming clear that we need to think beyond national borders. Start seeing ourselves as citizens of the planet. We're all connected, and the challenges we face need global solutions.
That's a huge change in perspective. How do we even start to create that kind of global identity?
It's a process. It starts with education, teaching kids about how everything is connected, about different cultures, and about sharing responsibility for the planet. We need to build empathy and compassion, a sense of global citizenship.
It's like expanding our circle of concern beyond our own little communities, even beyond our countries.
Exactly. And it's not just about changing our minds. It's about changing our hearts. We need a deeper connection to nature, to each other, to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all connects. It's about understanding our interconnectedness, figuring out the power and limits of technology, and finding a more ethical and compassionate way to live on this planet.
You got it. But remember, this is a conversation that's still going on. We don't have all the answers. And the solutions are probably going to be just as complex as the problems we're facing.
So what's next for us? Where do we go from here?
Well, we've talked about tech and values, but there's another force that shapes us that we haven't really touched on: religion.
That's interesting. Religion has been such a big part of human history, and it still influences so many people. How does it fit into this whole Anthropocene thing?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at how religious beliefs and practices can both contribute to and maybe even help solve the environmental problems we're facing. It's complex and often overlooked, but it's crucial to understanding how humans impact the planet.
Sounds like we have a lot more to discover. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we've talked tech, values, all that. But now we're getting into something I never thought would be so connected to the Anthropocene: religion.
It might seem kind of out there at first, but religion has been like this massive force in human societies forever, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It shapes what we believe, our values, and even how we act. So it makes sense that it would play a part in how we treat the environment.
Right. We're talking about billions of people around the world who get meaning from their faith. So how does religion fit into this whole Anthropocene thing? Is it like part of the problem? Or could it be part of the solution?
It's a tough question. And honestly, there's no easy answer. I mean, a lot of religions talk about taking care of the earth.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
They teach that we should be stewards of creation, live in harmony with nature.
Yeah, that whole caretaker idea, right? Like, we're not just owners of the planet.
Exactly. But then some religious ideas have been used to justify, well, human dominance over nature. The idea that we're separate from it, better than it, that we have this, like, divine right to exploit it.
Like the dominion over all creatures thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem.
Right. It's like we forget we're part of the ecosystem, not above it.
So how do we fix that? Can we, like, bring those two ideas together? Can religion actually be a force for good in the Anthropocene?
I think it can, but it needs a shift in focus. We need to move away from, like, this human-centered view and embrace something more ecocentric. You know, recognize that all living things have value and that everything's connected.
Seeing ourselves as part of the web, not separate from it, knowing that what we do affects everything else.
Exactly. And a lot of religious traditions already have that kind of thinking in them. It's about, like, bringing those ideas out, understanding them in a new way.
So not ditching religion, but evolving it, right?
Yeah.
Finding what connects us to each other and to the planet. It's like we need an environmental reformation.
Love that.
Yeah.
We need to find ways to bridge that gap between faith and science. We need religious leaders and communities to step up, you know, become champions for the environment.
Right. Using their influence to get people to act, change their habits, support policies that protect the planet.
Exactly. And I think it's already happening. We're seeing more and more faith-based groups getting involved in environmental stuff, conservation, climate change, all of it.
That's awesome to hear. It feels like a shift is starting. People are realizing that caring for the earth isn't just a political thing, it's a moral and spiritual thing too.
It is. And at the end of the day, I think that's how we navigate the Anthropocene. It's about understanding that this isn't just some geological era. It's a human story. It's about how we relate to the earth, our responsibility to future generations, and knowing that we can both create and destroy.
It's like we're holding a mirror up to ourselves, seeing what we've done, and realizing that we have the power to change things.
Exactly. The Anthropocene is a story that's still being written. We get to decide how it ends.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
The Anthropocene isn't just happening to us. It's something we're all creating with every choice we make. And that means we have the power to change it. We can be the generation that turns things around, the generation that finds a way to live in harmony with nature and create a world that's fair and just for everyone.
Wow. Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
We can choose to be the heroes of our own story. Thanks for taking this journey with us. We hope you're leaving feeling inspired, informed, and ready to make a difference.
Phosphorus.